Good Monday morning, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope week one went decent for y'all. I know if this is your first time dealing with Blackboard and really the first time as a college student, I'm sure a lot has uh, been a little bit of a learning adventure, um, especially if you have most of your classes online. Last week was a little bit of a challenge for me because my oldest daughter had COVID, so she had to stay out of school for the week. So my wife and I had to do a little bit of musical parenting. So I kind of apologize. I meant to give another sort of follow-up video. I'm hoping everybody saw that sort of first overview for modular one, or basically week one. Um, we're going to go a little bit more into some detail, again, about Blackboard, about some of the workings of the course. Um, Keep in mind the modulars are basically rhetorical modes of writing for us, meaning that those are going to be sort of the genres of writing that we go through over the period of the semester. So most modulars, until we get to probably about the fourth one, which deals more or less with the research project, you're going to have a couple components that go with the research paper before actually turning the final draft in. So modular four is probably going to be a little bit longer as it relates to the weeks that we spend on it. Usually the other modulars, one, two, and three, are about 3 weeks in length. So if you do the math, that basically takes us up to about week nine, week 10, which then that gives us, 4 or 5 weeks to finish up the last modular. So when you look at each modular, there's going to be some reading there. Again, there's going to be some hyperlinks. There's going to be some page numbers. And I will talk a little bit about, what that means here momentarily as it relates to the weeks moving forward. When you hear modular, I mean, for us, because we have it sort of built, modular one covers 3 weeks, modular two covers 3 weeks. But usually when I do these lectures, I do week one, week two, week three. I like the term, or I like the word week more than I do modular, but Blackboard Ultra, they wanted everybody to go basically move away from weeks and start calling them modulars. I really don't know why. When I think about modulars, I think about more or less like math or science courses, not necessarily, history or psychology or English. But I'm hoping, the syllabus quiz. I know some of y'all, when you look at your grade, you probably don't like what it is. It might have caught you a little bit off guard. I mean, you did have the syllabus there, hopefully. I know there's been some issues. Certain students were able to get on it without any issues. And then some of y'all emailed me. That's why I made the announcement where I uploaded the actual class syllabus in the announcements. It also should have went to your student email account. So you had two places to get it. I don't know the whole reason of why. This is the first time that I remember students having issues or were just asking, something to do with a login or link or something like that, which, it was working on my end. It worked on selective students' end. So I don't know if it was because if you were a new student, maybe that was the issue. I'm hoping, it wasn't just in our class. There's a lot of classes that had that issue. It didn't do that over the summer. It didn't do it last spring or last fall. So I don't know what the deal. It seems like it was widespread. It might not have just been for, the technical system for us here in the Southeast. It could have been throughout the state as well. Um, Pretty much the big thing that you need to sort of focus on for this week is finishing up the peer review of your narrative descriptive essay. The topics are still up there. It looks like some of y'all have started this. Again, we will walk through that a little bit more. But that's the big thing that's due by this Sunday, 11:59. Obviously, the earlier you get it in, you can respond to another peer's essay, read it, follow the instructions that I have on the actual discussion board, answer those questions, repost, your responses back to that peer's essay. Um, so in a lot of ways, it should be, peer helping peer improve the overall draft grade, but also, if time allows, I'm trying to go in there and respond to some of the essays too. Again, what I would probably suggest, as it gets closer to Sunday, because I have 6 classes now. The other 4 didn't make because they're more or less learning support classes. So originally I had 10, now I have 6. A good bit of them are online. So, I'm dealing with 20 plus students, 1101, 1102, 1010 courses. I got a couple in person or hybrid. So I'm looking at a lot of drafts. I'm looking at a lot of papers throughout the semester. So, if you get your stuff up there early on, at least on the discussion board, I will try to comment and give you some suggestions and comments. You may have to download the file and look in the right margin of your particular document to see my comments. But I would suggest after you revise whatever I tell you initially or whatever your peers tell you initially, if there's still time and you want a second pair of eyes to kind of look at your revision, the correction of what you did, send me that new draft as an attachment, Microsoft Word, to my email. You also have tutor.com. I'll show you about that. You can have them look at it. But again, you're only going to have about 10 hours, 10 free hours or tutor.com. So if it was me, I would probably hold on to those 10 hours, especially if research paper writing wasn't my strong suit in the past. I would probably really want to use those 10 hours toward the end of the semester. Of course, it's up to you. I think though, once you exhaust the 10 hours, they're going to charge you something. And I don't know what the charge is. I'm sure it's not cheap. Um, but that's something you can kind of entertain as you get to that point. You can use it for math if you're taking an online math course, or basically anything that we offer here as a course. There should be a tutor on tutor.com that can possibly help you with that particular course. What I'm going to show you here momentarily is going to be my tutoring and office hours. I will probably have those updated and uploaded on the syllabus. Usually that first week or so, we're trying to on our end, we're trying to figure out where we can have tutoring hours and office hours, just because there's a lot of you know possible changes going on. They're going to do, they did a purge, I think last week. They're going to do another purge today. So if you owe any money, you probably want to get that resolved before noon today. Otherwise, when you try to log in, you're probably not going to be able to log in because you didn't pay and they just dropped you of all your courses. And I think at this point, if they drop you, you're not going to be able to get back in as easily or at all. And if you are able to get back in, you're probably going to have to pay some late fees, which, I mean, obviously, if you're owing money now, you probably don't have money for the late fees because they're not going to be cheap. All right. So enough of me, and I'm going to zoom on over and share my screen so we can look at various things here. If you can tell, we're right here. And basically, like I said, these are my tutoring hours, in-person tutoring hours. I also have some virtual tutoring hours. We can talk a little bit about that. I am on the Camden campus, which is St. Mary's, Kingsland area. In person, I will have some tutoring hours on Monday, 9 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock in the morning. It'd probably be better to either do it downstairs at the library or we can come to one of the classrooms. What I would suggest is if you know that you want to do a tutoring session in person, just email me, I would say at least a day or so beforehand so we can go ahead and kind of schedule and set stuff up and I can tell you where we can meet. Then again, Tuesday and Thursday morning, the R here, because a lot of folks are having some issues. They think R. I don't know. A lot of times when they say T and R, they understand what T means. It's Tuesday. But when they see R, they kind of get confused. R means Thursday in college, abbreviation. So when you see R on your schedule, that means it's a Thursday class or something happening on a Thursday. So Tuesday and Thursday, I will have in person 9:15 to 10:15 in the morning. And then I have some virtual tutoring sessions if you want to go that route because you don't live in Camden or it just may make things a little easier. We can set something up via Teams, which is basically this is the program right now that I'm talking to you on that we can do a video. We can also set up some class, meetings if we can get enough people to all join. We can do like a mini class session too if that works in everybody's schedule. See, that's the problem sometimes with these online classes because we're not all in the same area. I could have some folks in, Jacksonville or some people I've had folks that I've taught that lived all the way up in North Georgia above Atlanta. So trying to get everybody, on at let's say 9 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon could be problematic depending on if you work, you got kids, whatever the case may be. But if you want to set something up, via appointment, that would probably be the easiest way with Teams. Um, Otherwise, I do offer some tutoring Wednesday 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then Tuesday and Thursday 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Now, just because, most of these are an hour long, you don't have to stay the full hour. If you got a quick question that you just want to hop on and talk about, 10, 15 minutes, great. It only takes 10 or 15 minutes. You want to jump on and stay 45 minutes. I mean, we can stay 45 minutes. I usually cap it off at an hour because that's usually what most, you go anywhere for a tutoring session or office hour, they're usually only going to give you about an hour. And then you can schedule more or, if there's nothing, if we don't have anything, if I don't have another class or something going on after that hour, we can, stay a little bit longer if need be. But usually in 60 minutes is a good starting point when it comes to that. And then I have some office hours, Monday and Wednesday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And then again, Tuesday and Thursday, 11 a.m. to noon, and then 5 to 6. So if you need to just drop by the office or something of that nature, we can kind of make some of those office hours, maybe, virtual to some degree, depending on where you're at. I mean, obviously, if you live in Hazelhurst, um, you don't necessarily have to make the trip down to the Camden campus unless you just have a reason to come down this way. I mean, I know gas, groceries, everything, nothing's getting cheaper by the day. So, I mean, save the gas unless you just want to come on down this way if you have a reason to. Otherwise, we can do something virtual if that's easier and works in your budget. A couple things though, before we're going to talk a little bit about some grammar issues or grammar concepts, and then we'll work on a little worksheet here momentarily. So again, these are the tutoring hours. This is the office hours. I will probably send out, or either I will email this out to everybody, like put it in an announcement, or I go ahead and probably, as we go through this week, start putting it into the syllabus so you can kind of go back and look at it there. If there's something already in the syllabus that has hours, don't go by those. They're probably my hours from last summer or this past summer. So they're probably not accurate. In a few, we're going to talk about this paragraph. It deals with sort of the first grammar quiz. I know some of y'all, I think, jumped the gun and kind of took that early when you didn't really need to just yet, but some of y'all already got a grade on it. That first grammar quiz is not really going to happen until we get into Modular 2, which would be probably like the second week of September. So it is coming up within another week or two. But some of y'all went ahead and jumped on that. And I think a lot of it was because it was available. I didn't try to hide it right off the bat, which if you look for it now, I actually moved it into the Modular 2 section. So that should be hidden right now. So kind of keep that in mind. look at the due dates. I know some of y'all went ahead and started doing the peer review. You wanted to go ahead and get ahead, but technically that wasn't really due until this Sunday. I mean, the big thing last week was that syllabus quiz, and again, I'll talk a little bit more about that here momentarily. Um, all right, let me click over here. We will talk a little bit. This is sort of, again, what your first grammar quiz is going to be about. And I think that one's due on September 11th, but I'll double check here momentarily. Um, we're going to talk about fragments, which you've probably heard. If you went through K through 12th grade, you talked about fragments, as early as elementary school. You probably talked about run-on sentences as early as elementary school. The two things that may be kind of new that you've probably heard of, but it might have been a while, are comma splices and parallelism. So if you look, a fragment is basically, based on this definition, we can kind of look at that real quick. A group of words that looks like a sentence but is incomplete because it lacks a subject, verb, or a complete thought. So if you look at the example, because she was late, you start with that dependent clause because, but notice there's really nothing there to complete the thought. You do have a subject, you do have a verb, right? She, was. Um, but there's nothing else to that. So you want to, as it says in the tip, always check the sentence that expresses a complete thought. Each sentence that it, has a complete thought with a subject and a verb. So here, the one way that you can fix it is just combine that, add some stuff to it. She missed the bus because she was late. You could always say because she was late, comma, she missed the bus, something of that nature. But I mean, as you can tell, the second one actually has the subject, the verb, and a complete thought. Comma splice, again, this is the one that could be a little bit more of a challenge, but you probably heard of it, especially if you've heard of fanboys, or better known as coordinating conjunctions, right? The fanboys are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, comma before that. So basically what it says here, when two independent clause, complete sentences, are joined with only a comma, without a coordinating conjunction, without a fanboy, then you have a comma splice. So if you look here, it says, I went to the store, comma, I forgot to buy milk. This is a comma splice. Why? Because what comes before that comma is a complete thought, and what comes after that comma is a complete thought. So you can do a comma and, which again, comma in one of the fanboys, or you can use a period after store, or you can use a semicolon like it says here, but you just can't have a comma in between two complete thoughts. Otherwise, you're always going to have a comma splice. Run on when two or more independent clauses or complete sentences are joined without proper punctuation or coordinated conjunction. So an example here, I went to the store, I forgot to buy my milk. Notice there's no punctuation. And what sometimes students will do is they will turn a run on thinking they're going to correct it. They will put a comma in between here, but they forget to do the comma in a fanboy. So basically what they do is go from one error to another error. So you go from a run on thinking you correct it by just putting a comma, but you've actually made a comma splice. So be careful that you're not making two errors, at once. Here again, you can put a period, you can put a semicolon, you put the comma and. It says each independent clause must be separated properly. And then we get to parallelism. Using the same grammatical structure in a series of words, phrases, or clauses to create balance and clarity. Example, she likes hiking, swimming, and to ride bikes. So here, notice how we have that present participle. We have the ing after, hiking and swimming, but here we have to, right? We have a preposition in front. So this is not parallel. So we need to have an ing with riding. So if you look here, she likes riding, swimming, and biking. So you want, again, the tip here is checklist and series. Usually that's where we see the deal with parallelism for consistent verb forms and structures. So a quick checklist for y'all when you start reading, for the peer reviews, when you start preparing for this particular grammar quiz coming up in a couple weeks. Every sentence should be complete, no fragments. Avoid joining sentences incorrectly. Watch for comma splices and run-ons, and keep list and series, grammatically balanced with parallelism. So in a minute, if we have time, I'll come back and look at this particular worksheet to kind of go through to kind of give you some hints. What I may do is kind of just send this out so you can have a little bit of practice or at least look at it. Because if we go to our actual Blackboard page, and that's what I'm going to pull up here momentarily, if it'll let me. I'm going to pull this over. So again, I'm going to show you where you can find a couple things. Start here, or welcome. This is where you're going to find your course textbook. So if you see page numbers throughout the modulars, you can come back to this course textbook, and that's where you're going to find that information. You have a MLA 9 handbook. That will be helpful early on about setting your essays up because you want to use Microsoft Word. I will show you where you can find, a page on your Office with Word where you can actually use a template that will be helpful that you can kind of use all the time. Simple syllabus, if you're able to get into that. Otherwise, I mean, if you go up here, usually when I make announcements, there's announcements here. So I can kind of tell how many people has actually looked. The first one, 21 out of 24, 18 out of 24, 14 out of 24, 13 out of 24. So some of y'all probably looked at these. A lot of folks that probably haven't. So, I mean, if you're wanting to know what's going on, you can kind of look here in the announcements, but you can also check your Outlook student email because the same announcements that you get here, it's going there too. So you actually have two places to get the information. So when we click here, like I said, you may have to use these downward arrows because there's other stuff there. This was the video from last week. You can kind of go back and look at that. It just sort of gives you the overview. Here's the syllabus quiz. Again, that was due yesterday, so basically it's a day late. You really need to turn that in. And like I said in the email, it's basically twofold. One, it does kind of show me, hey, did you really go through the simple syllabus and take the time to read and take notes and see what's going on in the course? And two, verification purposes. So after this particular purge that they're going to do at noon, they're going to want us to start verifying students. So if you did not do the first week assignment, which was basically the syllabus quiz, no matter what your grade is on it, you needed to complete it by the deadline. Because if you don't, then they're going to tell me, hey, now since we did two purges, and if you still don't have students that are active, really, doing stuff in a course, go ahead and drop them. So later this week, that's probably going to be the next step that they're going to want us to do, is to drop the students who didn't do any of the first week assignments and possibly the second week, because it is, depending on when it gets closer to Thursday or whatever the case, they may want us to start doing that. There's probably nothing in the additional resources, so you don't have to worry about that. This is the information about the first essay assignment, which is the narrative descriptive. This is where you can find the peer review, and this would be where you would drop the final draft or upload your final draft of essay one, the one that you really want me to grade. Now, the deal with that is once you upload it, I mean, depending on how close it gets to, because it's not due until September 7th. So if you look, today's the 25th. Next Monday is the 1st, so that's a whole week. And then you got, to the 7th. So you got nearly, you got a week. So that's 7 days, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You have nearly still about 2 weeks to revise whatever your peers and whatever I had a chance to say about your essay between now and the due date of the 31st when it comes to the peer review. To really get a decent I hope, well written first essay, because that's going to be sort of like the first big chunk of your grade, or 1/4 of that grade is going to be coming up soon. When you click on the modular readings, it's going to give you, A through L. Um, Again, these are page numbers in your e-text that you will, if you need additional information, I would go those. What I would suggest that you do is you click on the hyperlink, because otherwise you're going to think you're reading everything all at once and all this stuff. I would read the stuff that's online first. If you need additional help, meaning you read the stuff online and you just don't get it, then I would go to your OER and start looking, those page numbers up. Or you can do vice versa. You can go to the OER first, look these page numbers up, read that stuff. If you don't need additional help, then you don't need to click on these hyperlinks. If you do need additional help, then I'd click on the hyperlinks. I would pay attention to the essay format, because this is how your essays need to look, right? You need to have a header only on the first page, only on the left-hand side. You need to use Times New Roman font size 12. So you need to have your first name, last name. You need to have my name, Mr. Wilson. You need to have abbreviation ENGL capitalized and whatever the course is, 1101. And then what I would put is the day that the final draft is due. So this one's due on September 9th. So I'd put 9 September 2025. And then you want to make sure that you have your last name and page number in the top right-hand corner of every page. So as you can see here, this goes from Jones 1, Jones 2, Jones 3, so on and so forth. You want to double space everything throughout, right? You want to indent paragraphs, double space. You want to have a title to your paper. Don't just call it paper one or narrative one or story one. Have a title that's creative, that's, short to the and sweet and to the point where it sort of reflects what the paper is going to be about when your peer reads it or when I read it and give it a final grade. We'll talk a little bit more as it relates to these quotations and stuff. You won't necessarily need that right now. But as we get closer to the research paper, you will, like the works cited page. But if you go to your Microsoft Word, I can show you where you can find that template at real quick. If you go to your file, and mine is probably already up here. If you look up here, you're going to see MLA style research paper, MLA style paper. If you just go to search and put in MLA and hit enter, you're probably going to get a couple. Let's see. You go here, you click on it, and then you look here, MLA, and hit enter. You can either do the research paper or you can do the 9th edition. Let's say you do the 9th edition. What's going to happen is it's going to give you this. You can kind of read through this because it talks about MLA 9. But you can replace your header here with the stuff that you need, right? Your first and last name, my name, course number, the date. You can double click up here, replace this last name with your last name. You may have to do that a couple times. You may have to do it on page 2 as well, because sometimes it doesn't go. But the only thing that you really need to do is just replace that last name. Make sure that you have a different title, of course, because you're not talking about symbolism of birds in classical literature. And then if you click here, you're going to get rid of all this stuff because it's not your writing, but it's going to stay, or it should stay, in Times New Roman 12, and it should, keep double space, 1-inch margins, that type stuff. But this is the style that we're going to type our papers in. And again, you want to get rid of a lot of this stuff because this is not your paper. And you can kind of save this, at least the format for each paper that you do, because then you can kind of come back. And the only thing that you're really going to be changing at that point is the date and the title and the information that follows. So you don't have to kind of keep going back and forth. If you want to kind of save one of these, you can just get rid of the stuff you don't need and put the stuff that you do need in there. So definitely, because you don't want to be losing points because you're not following the right format. Make sure that you upload your work as a Microsoft Word document. And the reason for that is, I mean, yes, you can use a PDF file, I guess, but we can't mark it up, or I can't mark it up. So the only thing I can do with a PDF is basically read it and give you a grade. Which, if you're fine with that and don't care about the feedback, suggestions or comments, I can go that approach. But most folks probably want the feedback, and I can, with the Microsoft Word, I can highlight it and provide you some feedback. So don't think again that I think I had one student ask, do I have to read all this by, the 24th? No, again, because modular one is week 1, week 2, week 3. So you basically have from August 18th, because that's when we started, all the way really until September 7th to get everything done reading wise or video. There's some video wise for modular one, because the 7th of September is when we finish modular one, because that's when you're turning in the rough or the final draft of your narrative descriptive essay one paper. So again, if you click here, there's instructions about the peer. Here's the peer review sheet. So basically, I mean, the grade really should be kind of an easy 100. 50% of it is you following number one. Upload your completed rough draft as a Microsoft Word file, as it says here. That's 50% of your grade. The other 50% really comes from 2 through 4, right? You want to go through and pick somebody. And what I would suggest, maybe not pick don't pick the first one you see. Scroll through and look and see who hasn't really been reviewed. Because if everybody goes up and reviews, Joe Blow 40 times, I mean, if there's 20 people in the class, then everybody else is going to be shortchanged. So kind of go through and be selective. If you see somebody, if you click on the replies here, you can see that I do add some comments. You can download when it says RD. That's basically my feedback to your draft. Download it. Look on the right hand side. You're going to see bubbles. I basically tell you how you can improve your grade if you go through and not only correct what I say, but your partner's also, or your peer's also going to upload that peer review sheet, so you can kind of look and see what they say. So you had 2 pairs of eyes. You had one, the instructor, and 2, a peer look at. So if you wanted a third, after you revise what we said, you can easily send me another draft, or you can go to tutor.com and let them look at it. That'll be a third set of eyes. If you got somebody outside of the class that's really good with English, have them look at it. If you're, still a high school dual enrollment student, if you know a really good English teacher that you trust at your school, have them look at it. The more sets of eyes, the better the work should be. It's basically what I'm getting at. The problem is, like I said, these PDFs, I mean, I can read it and give you some comments, but I can't mark it up like I can with a Microsoft Word. So be careful of that. Same thing if you uploaded this as a final draft. The only thing I can do is read it and give it a grade. So as you can tell, there's still a lot of folks in this particular class that have not uploaded their draft or replied to a peer. So that will, sometimes that will happen. I had another student in another class say, well, I uploaded my draft, but there's nobody else right now, or I can't find an essay to review. And that's because, nobody else in the class has uploaded anything yet. So when your peer doesn't upload anything, you're kind of having to sit there. So I wouldn't necessarily wait until the last minute just to start uploading stuff, because, there's some folks that do want to go ahead and move through this process a little easier. And if you wait until Sunday night at 10 o'clock, it's going to be hard for a lot of folks that have already uploaded stuff, let's say last Wednesday, to get really any kind of constructive feedback going, because you waited 2 hours before the thing was due, and at midnight this thing is going to close. So be conscientious about that. Think about your other classmates, um, because everybody's going to have some sort of a suffering when it comes to their grade if people start procrastinating and dragging and waiting until the last minute to do these. What I could possibly do is, because there is a time and a date stamp, I can go back and see when, since there's 6 here, if that does become an issue, right? Nobody else is uploading and stuff on a timely manner. I can go back and sort of say, well, um, these students did what they needed to do early on. They didn't wait around. Of course, it wasn't really their fault because Peer 1 or 2 didn't submit until 11 o'clock on the Sunday that it was due. So I can go back and recalculate their grade to reflect a higher average compared to, somebody that's waiting until 11 o'clock to try to do it. And then you're going to, that person's going to be the one that suffers grade wise. So just be mindful that you're not kind of, screwing your teammate or your partner here. Because that's kind of what you're doing if you're waiting until Sunday, 10:30 at night to do a lot of this stuff. And you're not going to have, you're going to have peer review for essay 1, essay 2, and then the research paper. We will talk a little bit as it gets closer to the middle of October with modular 3. That's the respondus event that you're going to have to download and get set up, because you're going to have to do a 60-minute timed essay exam where you're going to have to write an essay from scratch. I sort of give you the topics about a week or so ahead of time. You can bring note cards and an outline. That's all. You can't have a rough draft. You can't have something already saved. You have to basically, start to finish in 1 hour, type an essay for that one. So that's the reason why we don't do a peer review for the midterm essay. As it gets closer to September 7th, I will go ahead and start opening up modular 2 in case those that want to sort of get ahead can, because if you feel confident about where your essay is heading here in the next couple weeks, you can go ahead and upload your final draft. Just what I kind of keep in mind as it gets closer to the 7th. Whatever you upload, that's what you're going to have to be happy with, because I have to keep going back and forth between 6 classes of, I think I uploaded the wrong draft. I don't want that draft. I want you to delete it. That's just going to take too much time on my part. It's going to take some time away from your peers too, because I could be giving them some constructive feedback. So be mindful as it gets closer to the 7th, because as it gets to the 5th, the 6th, that type deal, whatever you have uploaded, that, I'm going to keep it there. And that's going to be, you're just going to have to live with that grade. And hopefully it's good. As it relates to grades, right? If you look at some of them, again, probably the only grade right now you may have is a syllabus quiz. If you did some of the peer review, you probably have some grades there. Again, what I'm doing with the peer review is, if you don't turn anything in and you don't give anybody any feedback, obviously you're going to get a 0. If you submit your draft, well, you're going to get probably the highest you can get is 50%. If you submit your draft and complete a peer review on a peer, then you can get up to the next 50%, which means you can get up to 100 at that point. So really there's 3 grades. There's going to be 0, 50, or 100. And it should be very easy. You may have something between 50 and 100, right? Let's say that you submit your draft, okay, you get 50%. But when I look at your peer review, there's 12 or 13 questions. You only answered the first 4, so you're not going to get the full 100. You may get a 65 or a 70 at that point. The peer review is basically, like I said, to help each other, give you and your partner another set of eyes to help you within the next week really draft or revise your rough draft into a really great final draft that you're going to be proud of to get a final grade on. So if you do get 100 on your peer review, Don't, go away and say, well, he gave me 100 on the peer review, so my essay must be really good. I don't need to do any revisions. I don't need to look at Mr. Wilson's comments. I don't need to look at, Joe Smith's suggestions. I will just change the date and turn this thing in, and it's going to be great. Well, that's the wrong way to look at a peer review, because if you just turn things in because I gave you 100 on a peer review, then chances are you're probably going to get something 70 or lower, because that first draft of any type of writing is generally what they call the shit draft. It's going to suck. You're going to want us to tear it apart, right? For some of you, depending on how well you are at writing, depending on, if you're still in high school and you do a lot of writing and reading there, you may not need to, submit as many drafts to get that A or B. For those that have been out of school for 20 plus years, you may need to submit 25 drafts if you have time to get a passing grade or get an A or a B. An A in this course is a little bit harder to get. I don't just pass it out like Halloween candy. You got to work for your A. B's, I like to say I'm an easy B and a hard A, and that's basically what I am. B's, most folks usually get B's in my first English courses. I do have a handful that will get an A. C's is just average, and I understand English is not your thing, grammar is not your thing. You're not going to try to be an English instructor or teacher or author. You just want the C for the credit and move on. Then just do the bare minimum. It's really easy to get a D and an F in this class. Just, don't do anything or don't follow instructions. And I guarantee you're going to get that 69 or lower. I don't think you want that, especially because a D or lower in this class doesn't count as a passing grade. And I don't think you want to come back, say, in the spring or next summer and have to basically retake this class again. Because even if you do transfer to Valdosta or Emory or somewhere in California or somewhere in Canada or somewhere over in Iran, let's say, you're still going to have to probably take these core English and math classes. And we're at this point still one of the cheaper colleges when it comes to taking courses. So you might want to just go ahead, do the right thing, get your head in the game, do well these next 14 weeks so you're not having to retake this class again. Most people when they take my English classes don't have to take it again unless they just stop coming and stop delivering papers, drop out, whatever the case may be. That's usually if you stick out the course and you're doing your work and asking questions and coming to office hours and tutoring and all that stuff, generally you can get a 70 or higher in the course. Now, if you want a B, you got to work a little harder. If you want that A, you definitely got to work a little harder. This is not not high school where just I logged in today. Do I get it? No. I mean, if there's work due, you got to follow the deadlines for the work. Again, I'm not going to just give A's and B's for the sake of you logged in and stayed in the course for 5 minutes. If you don't turn stuff in, then you're going to earn what you deserve and deserve what you earned. That's usually what I tell my students. If you look on down, this is the tutor.com again. You click on that, go through the information. This is as we get closer to the midterm exam, you want to probably look at some of this stuff about navigating Blackboard Ultra still if you're having some issues with Blackboard Ultra. But definitely look at this Respondus. We will probably talk a little bit more about that, but this will tell you what is required and what you need to be able to be successful in that particular exam. And this is the assignment deadlines. So you can find it very bottom of your simple syllabus, or if you can go here, it will pull it up too. There's a calendar. And for the most part, this is what we're going to have do. Now, if you look, there's going to be most things we're going to be doing on Sunday. There's a couple things Thursday, maybe a Monday, maybe a Wednesday. For the most part, I'm not going to add more to this. But I'm probably not going to take stuff away. If anything, we're going to, push stuff back. But for right now, everything seems to be where it needs to be in case, something happens. We have a hurricane and we're, having to evacuate and people don't have power and internet and all that stuff. We may, instead of having quiz one on September 11th, we may have to push that to September 14th or something of that nature. So you're still do it. It's just going to be maybe a little later in the semester. I hope we don't have that, because at some point when we keep pushing stuff back, things start to really compress and cram up on not just you, but me too, because again, I have to read and grade this stuff. But if you look, if something changes, I will send an announcement or an email or both. But for the most part, this is what is going to be due and when it's going to be due. Um, so again, midterm is October 13th. That's a Monday. Toward the end of the semester, the final period is going to be around December 8th. So, I mean, for some of you who are worried about the grade so far, I mean, keep in mind, we got 14 weeks. You got 14 weeks to increase the grade from where it is, or you got 14 weeks to see the grade decrease each week. Hopefully it goes up and doesn't go down. Because as we get later in the semester, it's going to be hard to pull zeros up. So again, like I said, you want to keep in mind of deadlines. I would rather you turn something in and get some points on something than neglect turning something in and get a zero. Because each zero that you make is going to be minus 20 points from your overall grade. So if you get two zeros, you basically go from an A to a D just like that. You get three zeros, you basically go through from an A to an F. You're basically at a 40, depending on what your grade is. But let's say you had 100 in the class and you got three zeros, week one, week two, week three. Well, right now you got a 40. And I can tell you from week 4 to week 15, it may be hard to pull that up, because I think I've done the math. You need at least, for each zero that you make, you have to make 5 100s to pull that grade up just to a passing 70. So if you look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We got 16 assignments. So, 14, 15 weeks, basically assignment a week. But if you make three zeros and you're at a 40, and I just told you, hey, you need to make 5 100s per zero. So if you have three zeros, let's do the math. 5 times 3, that's 15. We only have 16 assignments. You don't have 15 extra assignments, which that would basically be about, over 30 assignments. So if you, rack up three zeros right off the bat, you might as well go ahead and withdraw the course, because there's just going to be no way that you're going to be able to pull that grade up from a 40 or a 30 to a 70 by December 8th. Because again, if you already have that many zeros, that's kind of telling me, and should be telling you, maybe this online college course is not my thing, or maybe I'm not really fit to go to college, mentality wise right now. We got so much going on outside my life that I can't focus, because it's just going to cause you more headaches, more stress, and you're going to rack up more zeros at some point. Because I always get that, oh, I can come back and, here it is, week 4 and week 5. You already missed a month's worth of work. I can do it all this week. Oh, you can do 4 weeks worth of work plus this week. So basically you're doing 5 weeks worth of work. You got 5 assignments due, and you can do all of that by that particular deadline on Sunday, and you're just emailing me Thursday and telling me this. So that's why I don't do the late work. Follow the deadlines, turn the stuff in on time or before time, and you should be okay. This late work stuff, because I got 6 classes, I'm not going to hunt you down. I got 2 kids at home. I'm not going to play the parent and say, well, you need to turn this thing in. You got the outline right here of what's due and when it's due. I'm going to make some announcements, and that's it. I'm not going to hunt you down because you did turn something in. You just, you can rack up the zeros. I will, as it gets closer, like I said, toward the end of the semester, I will drop one of your low stake assignments, which is basically anything that's not a major essay. So like the syllabus quiz or one of these peer reviews. So, by November or so, you have a pretty good idea about where your grade is at and what you're possibly going to be making for the final semester grade. So I will ask you which one you want me to drop as we get closer. Uh, if time allows, I will probably offer, 2 or 3 opportunities of extra credit as it gets closer to the midterm or after the midterm. Again, the extra credit's going to be open for, a small window of time if we got time for it. And I mean, if you worry about your grade, I would go ahead and kind of do it for cushion. I mean, it's stuff that you're going to need to know how to do as it relates to the library orientation and research paper. So, it's sort of part of the class. So you might as well go ahead and get the cushion for the extra credit. Don't come up to me December 8th when I'm about to turn grades in the next day and you got a, 64.5, basically a 65 because I will round that up. But don't come up to me and says, well, do you have any extra credit? I really need a 70. And I'm gonna be like, well, I offered 3 or 4 different chances back in October. Why didn't you take that? I'm not gonna give extra credit at the end of the semester. Uh, because they're gonna want grades from everybody, within a 24 period after that last final exam day. So again, keep up the work, ask questions. Don't wait till the last minute if you're having issues. If you're having computer issues, like with Blackboard and stuff, I'm not the computer expert, so you're going to have to get in touch with the college, the IT people, to see what's going on. More than likely, it's a problem on your end. Um, because again, I can't see what's going on with your computer. I don't know what type of computer you got. Could be your internet connection. And again, these are things that you're going to want to address between now and week 8 when it comes to the midterm, and you're going to have to do the respond this thing online because if you got a really bootleg computer that's not working too well, if you live in an area where the internet works depending on which way the wind is blowing that day, you probably don't want to take it up, you don't want to be at home trying to take the respondus. You want to go to the closest college campus to take it. So these are things, within the next couple of weeks, you're going to start, I hope, resolving and working out, making sure everything is up to date on your end as it relates to the internet connection, the internet, the web. You're going to need a webcam and a web mic for this particular respondus coming up, week 8. So you want to go ahead and plan for some of this stuff and not wait until the last minute. Um, Otherwise, I think that's pretty much it really for week 2. I mean, pretty much get that peer review in and start looking at some of your peers' drafts, and then get really ready for week 3, which would be preparing a little bit more for that quiz. And we're probably not going to have a lot of time to go over that particular deal because I got another class coming up. But what I will do is I will probably send this out, um, the practice, toward the end of the week, if not sooner. So in case you want to do it and then you want to sort of email me back to make sure that you're understanding the concept of fragments, comma splashes, and run-ons, parallelism, so you're not going to do the same on the quiz, so your quiz grade is lower, and 2, you know how to fix it in your own writing, so your essay grades don't start to suffer, and then you can help your peers in case they start doing it in their peer rough drafts so you can kind of help them fix that particular grade. Um, Otherwise, I hope everybody has a great first week. I hope everybody has a great second week. And I will see you again probably after Labor Day as it relates to a video. Have a good Monday. Talk soon.